Good afternoon, Chigi. Thanks for the nice introduction. It's good to be back, as always. Pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can chat about this afternoon. So let's get started.
Yeah, I know we have so many things to talk about. I think we have all this food and some drinks here. I think we're intending to live here for a couple of days, right, Guenter?
Yeah, looks pretty homey here. A lot of chips, a lot of peanuts here, good Coke, a bottle of whiskey. So everything that one needs to have a good shot.
Yes, absolutely. Guenter, first things first. Tell us the story about who Guenter Taus is. Obviously, you're the CEO of Spartan Philippines. It's a huge undertaking. You're also the outgoing president of the ECCP. You also manage several other companies and other NGOs or non-governmental organizations. Tell us the story about who Guenter Taus is, where he was born, what he did when he was a kid, where he went to school, and all that stuff. In a nutshell, of course, because we don't have all week.
So in a nutshell, you want me to be Rapunzel, let down your hair. Okay, I'll try to do that. I was born in Austria, in a small little town near Innsbruck.
Okay.
And that I will not tell you what year it was now. It was 1959.
Okay.
I lived my first 4 years of my life in Austria.
Okay.
And my father was a construction engineer, and he wanted to explore the world. So 1963, when I was 4 years old, we actually left Austria, and I grew up for a couple of years in Malaysia.
Okay.
From Malaysia, always with short interruptions in Austria, we went on to Pakistan, lived in Pakistan for a couple of years.
Okay.
From there, we went to Morocco. Then I went back to Austria and studied in Austria. I hold an electronics engineering degree. From there, I ventured out. My first actual job was in Guatemala. So I went from Austria to Guatemala, stayed in Guatemala for about a year and a half. From there, I worked for a German company. It was a construction company, but I took care of the electronic part and a number of different things. And from there, I ventured out for the same company to Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia was my first contact with Filipinos, because my workforce, there were 600 people reporting to me. Majority of them were Filipinos. So that was the first touch I got, and everybody told me, you got to come to our country, it's the best country in the world. And since I was then already an enthusiastic scuba diver, I said, well, it's a good place to try out. So my first time I came to the Philippines was August 1980.
Okay.
My first trip was, I didn't like Manila then, because it was too crowded as a city I could never live in. So never say never.
That was back in 1980, right?
It was 1980.
It was already crowded.
It was already very crowded.
Okay.
Then I went to Cebu. That's when I discovered for the first time Boal Boal. I've liked Cebu. I've liked the surroundings of Cebu. Then I went back, and from between 1980 and 1986, I actually traveled back and forth to the Philippines quite often, 3-4 times a year for scuba diving and just to explore the country. So I guess by now, after 40 years, I have seen more of the Philippines than probably most Filipinos. In '86, after my contract was over in Saudi, I decided to, with an Austrian partner, to come to the Philippines and set up a company. And we came here beginning of February 1986. So I was here for the original EDSA revolution and every
EDSA 1, they call it.
And every EDSA 1, DOS, stress, whatever after that. So yeah, I've seen all the presidents from Marcos through Cory, through Ramos, through whatever else, to the present time.
Wow, you sound like you're more Filipino than most Filipinos I know. Obviously you've journeyed around the world. You're what people would call a journeyman. You've traveled around the world, and yet you picked these islands of the Philippines. What do you think? What was the lure? What was the reason why you finally settled on at least stay here for you said 4 decades in the Philippines? Why was that? What do you think happened?
But I guess it's a number of it's not a single reason. It's a number of things that happened. While I was in Saudi Arabia, I met my first wife.
Okay.
We got married in '82. We had a daughter, Charmaine. She was born in '82 in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And I always said I do not want, if I ever have children, I do not want them to grow up the way I did, that your parents take you out to a different country every couple of years, because you keep on, it seems like Groundhog Day, you keep on revisiting the same thing over and over again. You build up friends, and then you're taken out and you start all over again. So in '86, when my original contract was over, I did a 6-month stint for Saudi Arabian Airlines. That didn't work out very well. So I said, no, I had enough of corporate life. So I looked at the Philippines because I said, let's settle down somewhere. I did not want to go back to Europe.
But she was Filipina.
She was Filipino.
Okay.
Yeah. But I didn't want to go back to Europe for a number of reasons. I've never really associated myself very deeply with Europe to live there. I'm still European and probably always will be. But I wanted to be in a tropical country. So the Philippines, and looking at the Philippines, looking at opportunities, I said, well, this is a perfect country because it is so down in comparison to the rest of Asia. It can only go up. Little did I know then, okay. But basically it was a combination of finding a home for my daughter, finding a place wherein I can relate to people. And as I said, I have been working with Filipinos for many years and was always a positive experience. Mentality is pretty Western. Everybody speaks English, predominantly Roman Catholic. So all the ingredients were there to say, fine, Philippines is probably the way to go. And looking at the opportunities you have in the country, had and still have, I said, perfect place. That's how I came here.
You've obviously been, like I said, around the world. You've done so many things. What do you think is the operating system? If you were a computer, what would your operating system be? What gets you up every single morning? Why does Guenter Taus get up in the morning and do what you do and do it with passion and do it for a long period of time? What do you think that is?
It's a hard question to answer, Chiggy, but I think what makes me tick is really challenge.
Okay.
I couldn't run a corporate job. I've done this for 11 years and it burns me out. To do the same thing every day and in and every day out is not what I do. I think I'm pretty opportunistic. I look at something and say, fine, there's an opportunity there. So how can we structure this thing now to make it workable?
Okay.
So I really look for challenges and I look for things to do that move me on. And I have to say, I do feed on intelligence. I like to work with brainy people. That's why I'm here with you.
Okay.
It's always good to work with people that think on their own, that think on their feet. So I think I'm all about empowering people and bringing them up with me, and you feed off each other rather than to just be a one-man show. So I like to have tangible teams and workable teams around me that I can bring up with me, and we do things together. And I think the Philippines is a perfect place because Europe is very stale when it comes to entrepreneurship, and the Philippines is all about entrepreneurship because there's hardly enough jobs for the people, so everybody has to think on their toes and on their feet in order to feed their families. And it's a very conducive environment to actually look at opportunities and say, fine, I see something here, so how can we develop that? So,
Europe is fairly a relatively democratic continent, group of nations. The United States, of course, a democracy. The Philippines is a democracy. And we're having some, just suffice it to say, some problems, right? In the meantime, China is succeeding and, in fact, is dominating in many facets of the world. What are your thoughts on the rise of China? And what does it mean to the world that China is, as one article I read indicated, is the country that refuses to fail?
But if you the good old saying is God made the world, all the rest is made in China, is really true. And if you look 30 years back, who actually empowered China to become what it is was actually the Western world out of greediness. Labor in Europe or in the States is too expensive. We need to find cheaper places to manufacture. Go to China. And we made China what it is. And now suddenly you have a Trump says, wait a minute, what happened here? Hey, it was your country who did it, along with all the other developed nations. But I think it's unfair to look at China and say they're opportunistic. Of course they are.
Of course.
But we empower them to do and to be what they are and who they are. So why wouldn't they? If I empower you to be a single supplier, you take the opportunity. So I think they did the right thing. They run with it.
So are you saying that China is succeeding and democracy doesn't work? That letting people do what they want to do doesn't work, and you've got to have some sort of a more stringent government control when it comes to running nations? No, is the way China is being ran the better solution? Are you saying that?
In the case of China, yes, it worked. In the case of Russia, it didn't work. So I think the political form whether you're a democracy or you're a dictatorship or whatever it may, or you're a communist country, does not determine the success that you have. It is basically and if you look at the hierarchy, it is the top that dictates what happens in the bottom. Yeah. And I think China was very smart the way they structured it, the way they brought businesses into their country, the way they helped those businesses to get established. Yeah, it was a lot of government interference, a lot of government help, something that we completely miss in most other Asian countries. Yeah, it's you're on your own, government is not there to help you. So China did a lot of things the right way and succeeded. Whether you need to have, I think, in order to succeed in a developing country, you need a little bit of a strong hand in order to focus people on the right track. Because if not, you have everyone running off in the wrong direction, in its own direction. So leadership is important, but I still believe very much in democracy, because to me that's the only form. It's how I grew up, and I do believe in individual choices.
But it's failing all over the world.
Is it
Democracy
failing?
is failing all over the world. Like, like economies are crumbling. Democratic nations are crumbling.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with because they're democracies. Look at Russia.
Okay.
Look at the 90s or the 2000s when Russia fell apart.
Okay.
Russia was probably the example of successful communism, and
Okay.
it was a total disaster. So I don't think it's the form of government you have. I really think it's the form of leadership we have. Yeah. If I look at Europe, most of the countries, leaderships are used to be fairly left-wing and turning more and more and more right-wing, and it brings it's a set of problems. The same thing in developing nations. Look at Asia. I mean, you have a lot of countries that are extremely successful. Look at for instance, Singapore. Without Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore wouldn't be what it is. And Lee Kuan Yew was a dictator, but an honest dictator. Okay, so I don't think it's the form of government that we have that determines the success or not.
So what determines the success of a nation? Is it a matter of the form of government matching the character of its people, or what is it?
Well, I would say yes. It is. The leadership has to match the mentality of people. I mean, you could probably have run the Philippines for a long time as a dictatorship. Did it work? No, it didn't work. You have run the Philippines as a very loose democracy. Has it worked? No. Does something in between work? Yes and no. So again, I think every nation has to figure out what is the right way of leading my people to the success that we want to be at. And China did a great job at that. Yeah, so again, I think it all boils down to if you look at in a smaller scale, if you look at a company, it is really the head of the company that determines the culture and the success of the company. And if that leadership is wrong, then everything else crumbles. Because it's not bottom up, it's top down.